The boy sat in the back row of his classroom, his notebook filled with half-written sentences and empty spaces where answers should have been. His name was Daniel, 16 years old, though the weight on his shoulders made him look much older. Each failing grade he brought home felt like a hammer striking away at his confidence. His parents had long stopped asking him about school. Their disappointment expressed more in silence than in words. Every morning, he walked through the school gates with the same heavy thought pressing against his chest. Maybe this was pointless. Maybe he wasn't meant for learning. Maybe he was just wasting everyone's time. He had begun to think of dropping out, imagining himself slipping quietly from the classroom, forgotten by teachers and classmates alike. To him, it seemed easier than facing another red mark on his papers. The world around him felt like a blur of voices, each one carrying expectations he couldn't reach. He watched his classmates raise their hands with answers that rolled off their tongues so icily, while his own voice stayed locked inside, tangled with doubt. He felt small in a world that demanded so much, as if his place in it had already been decided. Failure. Sometimes, late at night, Daniel would stare at the ceiling in his room, wondering if his life would always feel this empty. He thought about his father, who worked long hours, never once looking him in the eye when he came home. He thought about his mother, tired and worn down, who avoided asking about his homework because the truth hurt too much. The silence in their house mirrored the silence in his heart. In class, his teachers moved from lesson to lesson, often not noticing the boy shrinking at his desk. But there was one teacher who did notice. Her name was Mrs. Collins, a woman in her 40s with patient eyes that seemed to see deeper than most. While other teachers looked past Daniel, she paused on him. She saw the hesitation in his movements, the way his hands trembled when asked to read aloud. Still, Daniel believed it was too late for anyone to help. His thoughts were heavy, clouded by the idea that he simply wasn't enough. In his mind, his future was already written, and the ending was failure. Yet, within the quiet walls of that classroom, something unexpected was about to happen. A single phrase, just a few words, would slip into his life like a spark into the dark, and nothing would ever be the same. One afternoon, Daniel stayed behind after class, slouched at his desk while the other students hurried out, their laughter echoing down the hallway. He was too tired to join them, too weighed down by another failed quiz, returned with red ink that cut across the page like wounds. He stared at it until the numbers blurred, his throat tightening with the urge to give up once and for all. Mrs. Collins, who was gathering papers at her desk, noticed he hadn't moved. She walked over quietly, her footsteps soft against the floor. Daniel kept his eyes down, bracing himself for another lecture he could not bear to hear. But instead, she sat beside him, letting the silence linger until he finally looked up. Her voice was calm, steady, almost fragile in the way it carried something different from what he expected. She didn't mention the grade, nor the missing homework. She simply said, "Daniel, I believe in you." The words landed inside him like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through his thoughts. For a moment, he wondered if he had misheard her. No one had ever said that to him before. His parents spoke of responsibility, his classmates joked about his failures, and the world around him seemed to echo only his shortcomings. But here was someone telling him he was worth believing in. He could not speak. His chest tightened, not from shame this time, but from something unfamiliar: hope. He left school that day, with her words still ringing in his ears, as though they had been etched into him. They were small words, simple in form, yet they carried more weight than any disappointment he had ever known. That night, as he opened his books, he found himself staring at the pages differently. The sentences weren't easier, the numbers weren't clearer, but he felt something shift. For the first time, he thought that maybe effort was not wasted, that maybe the struggle meant something if someone believed he could succeed. The days that followed were not easy. His classmates still laughed when he stumbled over answers, and his parents still remained quiet when he came home. But Daniel noticed a change in himself. Instead of leaving assignments blank, he tried to fill them. Instead of giving up halfway, he stayed up late, working through problems, even when the solutions slipped away from him. And each time doubt whispered in his ear, he repeated the phrase he had been given, "I believe in you." It became both a reminder and a lifeline, a fragile but powerful thread pulling him away from the edge of surrender. The weeks turned into months, and Daniel slowly began to see pieces of himself he had never known were there. His grades rose, not overnight, but in steady steps, like a fragile plant pushing through the soil toward the light. Each improvement, no matter how small, felt like proof that he was not as hopeless as he once thought. He began to sit taller in class, his hands sometimes lifting when he was certain of an answer. The fear that once paralyzed him was still there, but it no longer ruled him. The road was not free of setbacks. There were days when exhaustion overcame him, when the weight of homework and ridicule dragged him down. But in those moments, he heard Mrs. Collins's words echo in his heart. They reminded him that someone had seen potential in him, even when he couldn't. That belief became the seed of his own self-belief, something he had never thought possible. At home, his parents started to notice the small changes. The once quiet boy who used to hide his test papers now placed them on the table, his scores inching higher each time. His father, still tired from long shifts, gave him a nod that carried a silent pride. His mother, once weary, now smiled when she saw him bent over his books late at night. By the time graduation arrived, Daniel was no longer the invisible boy in the back row. He wasn't at the top of his class, but he was there standing with his peers, cap and gown on, ready to walk across the stage. As he stepped forward to receive his diploma, the crowd's applause thundered around him. Yet his eyes searched for just one person. Mrs. Collins sat near the front, her smile warm and knowing, as if she too understood that this moment was more than a ceremony. It was a victory. A victory not just over grades, but over despair, over silence, over the voice inside that once told him he would never be enough. Holding his diploma, Daniel felt a deep truth settle inside him. Belief is not just a gift, it is a light. It had been given to him in a single phrase, and that light had carried him through the darkest nights. He realized then that belief is not meant to be kept, it is meant to be shared. Years later, when life placed him in front of others struggling as he once had, Daniel carried those same words forward. He understood now that a single phrase could change the course of a life, just as it once saved his. Sometimes the most powerful gift we can offer another person is belief. It costs nothing, yet it has the strength to open doors that once seemed locked forever. Daniel's story reminds us that encouragement can plant seeds of hope where despair has grown too deep. Words spoken with sincerity can linger, guiding someone through their hardest moments, giving them courage they didn't know they had. Who in your life needs to hear that you believe in them today? Perhaps your words could be the spark that changes their tomorrow. If this story touched you, please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.